Hey there, audit and fraud friends and family. Listen, I got a question for you today. Who else gets a little nervous just walking into the hospital? Is it just me? I mean, because like it could be the smell, the paperwork, the needles, or maybe it's just the fear of something going wrong and you didn't even know about it. So tell me, anybody else get the heebie jeebies every time you have to go into a hospital, or is that just me? By the way, you're going to want to hang on and listen to today's show because, man, it is just, it's crazy. That's all I can say. All right, are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Friday Fraudster podcast. Join them as they discuss sad, funny, and sometimes disturbing fraud stories. Be sure to catch past episodes on your favorite podcasting platform or go to www.fridayfraudster.com.
All right, so you guys heard the question that I asked. Anybody else just get weirded out by hospitals? Anybody? So Marsha says, yep. Afraid of needles. Good. Stephanie says, happy Friday. Wait, is that Stephanie or is that's Carol? Okay. Hey, Carol. Carol says, happy Friday. Carol, are you afraid of needles or just hospitals? Do you get the EBGBs every time you go into a hospital? Oh, Marsha said, why men are afraid of needles. I'm not afraid of needles. I just don't like hospitals. You know, the needles, I'm okay with the needles. The nurses actually look at me like I'm crazy because I'll be giving blood and stuff and I'll just be looking, watching the blood flow. Okay. So listen. Let me know if you're afraid of hospitals and what is the most scariest thing, whether real or all in your head, that you can think of that causes you to be afraid of hospitals. Now, without further ado, we're going to ask our guests the same question. Christine, Thomas, what's going on?
Not a whole lot.
Happy Friday. Very, very glad it's Friday.
You and me both. So what do you think, Christine? You and needles, you and hospitals. You okay with hospitals?
Oh, yeah. Needles, yeah. I've got a lot of tattoos.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You do. Yeah, so you're okay with needles.
Yeah.
But hospitals,
They're
Wait,
fine.
How do you know she has it? Never mind. I won't ask.
They're pretty obvious. They're like right there.
Yeah.
I'll just,
You
all
see
I
me
ever
in
see
a
is
t-shirt.
Thomas is like, I've only seen from the head up like Max Headroom. Remember Max Headroom?
Oh yeah.
I'm aging myself.
The original AI Max Headroom.
Right?
I got to see Rob in person once.
Twice.
Oh, yeah, twice.
So what about you, Thomas? Hospitals. What do you think?
Yeah, it always feels, I don't know, kind of weird, kind of creepy. I don't have a problem with needles or anything, but yeah, it always just, you're ready to be out of there. You know, the moment you step foot in, the moment you drive into the parking lot, you're ready to be leaving.
Yeah. You know, sometimes I feel like as soon as I drive into the parking lot, I automatically just get sick.
Yeah.
And like I'm that person, like I feel like all of a sudden I'm getting better and then I'm wasting money. Like there's nothing seriously wrong.
Right? Okay. I know I'm known for saying the unexpected, so sometimes I catch you guys off guard. But look, let's go to our audience now. Now, Carol says she doesn't like needles. And then Marsha says she's always concerned the nurses are real and not imposters. So yeah. Stephanie's over on Thomas's profile, and Stephanie has her picture fixed now. You can see who she is. She updated the privacy settings. Oh, you know what? Yeah, can you imagine? Can you imagine going in because you have a pain like in your arm or something and it's not that big, just a little bruise, and then you leave without an arm because they amputated? Yeah. Stephanie says leaving with something worse than when I went in.
I had that happen to my friend, but it saved his life.
Wait, he got amputated?
No, but he almost died.
Oh yeah.
No, it was around COVID and he ended up coughing, threw his back out. He's not a small guy. He's 7 feet tall. So he's laying on the ground in his living room. And so his girlfriend ends up calling an ambulance to help get him to the hospital. They test him for COVID because he's got lung issues just from when he was younger. They ended up discharging him with pneumonia. He ended up flatlining in the parking lot.
Wow.
Yeah, they brought him back in. They resuscitated him. And while they were doing his scans and everything else, they just went a little bit further. Yeah, found out he had liver cancer, stage 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, his doctor said if COVID doesn't kill you, it saved your life. He's around. He's good.
Insane.
Isn't that crazy?
Now, that is very insane. Now, Marsha says Christine must have had a Red Bull when those tats were being done. And wait a minute now. Who are you saying, hey, from Washington? Who is that? I don't know who you are. Who are you? Because you're on Thomas's profile, so I can't even cheat and look and see who you are.
Wow.
Hold on. Let me see. Oh,
And
that's
Shree?
Let's see.
That's who?
I might pronounce his name wrong, but K. It's Kae. K Walk.
Oh, that's Kay. Okay, yeah. Kay is usually always here. But she's usually on my profile and I can look down and see, and I'm like, oh, that's Kay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
People just like me better. That's all. It's all right.
Well,
They're
do,
slowly
and I
moving
can't
over to
really
my
blame
profile.
them. I mean, can you really blame them though? I mean, I can't blame them for liking you better.
How dare you?
So, no, Shree said she always wanted to know if the nurses are high, as in high, not saying hi.
Should I be worried my niece is going into nursing? She works in
Yeah.
an emergency room right now.
Look, Kay said that's like me saying as soon as I see sweets, I gain weight. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Here's the thing, though. What you have to do is always go on vacation because calories don't count when you're on vacation. That's the thing. Yeah.
So you're telling me I don't go on enough vacations?
Yeah, exactly.
That's probably a true statement. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, Marsha says, I have a doctor friend in my friend circle, and he said he has to take something before he performs a surgery. Whoa. Okay. Oh, okay. Ha ha, Thomas. Stephanie is now joining from my profile. Okay. So, yeah, I think all of us have at least some small healthy fear of hospitals and doctors. Then there are those of us who have very irrational fears. You know, you see a white coat and you head out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that is normal. And some of that causes us to be a little bit vigilant, right? When it comes to checking up on ourselves and making sure that we're healthy. But just imagine this. Imagine you're visiting one of your loved ones every day. They're in pain and you're told that they're getting their medication, but to you, something just doesn't sit right. They don't look the same. They don't talk the same. They don't seem the same. And so you start asking questions and you start to uncover things that don't seem up to snuff because you don't like the answers that you're getting back. What would you all do? What would you do if that happened?
Raise Cain.
Yeah, I'd be questioning. You know, it's healthy to ask questions, right? You know, maybe it's something you don't understand. Maybe it is something legitimate, but yeah, just bringing it up.
Yeah, that makes sense. You'd ask questions, try and figure out what's going on. And then what happens if the facility keeps denying it, but you keep seeing the issue? What would you all do? Would you ever get to a point where you would escalate it further, or would you just move your loved one away and get them away from all that nonsense?
I'd probably do both. Because I just look at it like, once that trust is broken, why would you know what I'm saying? Why would you stay there? That'd be
Yeah.
like going to a restaurant, finding a roach in your cheeseburger and giving them a second chance 2 weeks later. None of us would go back to that restaurant. Why would we be okay with letting our loved ones live in in an environment that we can't watch over them and make sure that they're safe and getting what they need?
That's a really good analogy.
But on the flip side of that, though, if they've built a relationship with those nurses, those doctors, if they've made just kind of an honest mistake, like it doesn't feel right, but if it was some kind of honest, or they fired the nurse that or doctor that was kind of involved with whatever it was, like it's easier the devil you know than the devil you don't kind of scenario.
Okay, yeah. That's very true. Very true. Well.
Do either of you have any family that are in a nursing home or an extended care or assisted living? I do not.
My uncle is in one temporarily. He had an incident recently, and so he is recovering, and we're hoping he'll be able to go back home, maybe, possibly, but he's in one right now temporarily.
I'm so glad you said grandfather, not grandmother, because we had an incident on a freeway here in Houston yesterday, and I was going to make a joke about that. So you said grandfather, so I won't bring that one up. But I've had two family members in care before, but neither one of them lasted very long. I don't have anybody currently. So no.
Yeah, I think if it were me, I'm with Christine. I'd do both, right? I would try to move the person, but that's hard nowadays because you got to get them accepted into the other facility and stuff like that. And then I probably would rat somebody out. They say snitches get stitches. I say snitches are the heroes. Seriously. And Shri said her dad was in one. Yeah, yeah. And then Stephanie is saying, I was raised by a nurse, so I ask all the questions. Ooh, now here's the thing. So, Stephanie, did your mom ever tell you some crazy, or dad, whichever one was a nurse, right? Some crazy nurse stories? Because I was a chief audit executive in the healthcare field, and I can tell you I've heard and seen some very interesting and crazy stories. But in today's story, the patient, Sherry Casper, she was an elderly woman receiving care at a skilled nursing facility in Indiana. And her daughter, Angela, visited her daily, and she became concerned. She thought that maybe her mother wasn't receiving her medication. Now, get this, her mother had some really bad anxiety issues. And so she was taking this pill called clonazepam, and it is for anxiety, seizures, and other conditions. It helps with insomnia too, but a lot of people mostly take it for anxiety. And so she noticed changes in her mother. She noticed that her mother was in visible pain despite being told by the staff that she had received her meds. So she raised her concerns to the facility. Unfortunately, there was a growing gap between what the facility told her and what she visibly witnessed coming from her mother. Yeah, I'm just gonna pause right there for a moment. Get any comments before we go further from you guys?
I feel bad for her because that even if there was that, her daughter had to have noticed something. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you notice if somebody has anxiety to the point where they're taking medication and you're their daughter, I'm sure you know what your parent is acting like when they're not getting their medication. And for you, it's it's like I would sit there and think about it like, you're making my mom suffer. Like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Like
I
that was
wonder.
infuriating. Go ahead, Thomas. Sorry.
That's all right. So thinking about it from purely a customer service standpoint, I kind of wonder how often they get complaints that are not necessarily relevant complaints. And I wonder if it was just one of those that they're constantly getting complaints and they're like, just almost shut up and leave me alone type of a response from the facility. Because I know like eventually you get complaints that are legitimate, but you also get people that complain just to complain. So I wonder if this didn't appear that way to the facility.
Sure. Now, I think this might be Kay saying, I totally lived the reality of a loved one not getting their needed life-saving medications. Went to administration to investigate, ultimately got the state involved after I pulled the loved one out. Yep, that is it. And Stephanie is saying, sure, yep, mom worked in a nursing facility for over 30 years. So, yep, she has some stories. And then Stephanie is always astute, right? Always astute. Sounds like someone working there was stealing meds. Ooh, boy. And then Marsha says the daughter would know if the mom knows her mom and would know if something were off.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, unfortunately, the mom ended up dying. And one of the nurses that was on duty got in trouble. She was Heather Presley, age 52, and she was responsible for administering medication to the mom the night of the incident, the night that she died. After the mom died, the facility then investigated the nurse and the nurse's role, and they discovered several discrepancies, both in her role at the hospital and in her history. For example, well, you know what? Let me just take a step back before I do the for example. I think I've said this before on the show, but hey, new episode, so let's just kind of start from the top. Many of you know that I was a chief auditor in the healthcare setting. So this actually hits very close to home. What happens in healthcare settings is you have what's called a drug dispensing cabinet where all the drugs are kept. When a physician writes a script for a patient, it goes into the system and now it's being held and you can get the drugs out of this drug dispensing cabinet, but not just anyone. Most times you have to provide a code and or some biometric security to get in if you're a nurse or whatever. So what happens is the nurse will access the cabinet. They already know what meds the patients are approved for, and then it's just a match. Here's what the physician said the patient should have. Here's what the nurse is trying to pull. Now, unfortunately, the doses aren't going to necessarily match what the physician prescribes. So let's say, for example, if you are prescribed 5 milliliters of a certain 5 milligrams of a certain drug, but it's only available in a 10 milligram vial, the nurse will pull out the 10 milligram vial, load 5 up into a syringe, and literally throw away 5 to make 10, right? So the system will have 10 in it. You took out 5. 5 should be what you gave to a patient. Typically, when you get to the patient's bedside, you scan their armband, which tells the system, I've given them the 5. You may not have, though. You could have, siphoned it. But typically, if you scan it, you've done it. And for that 5 that you throw away, that's called wasting. You're supposed to waste it in the presence of another nurse, and you both sign off that you've wasted that drug in the system. So 10 minus 5 equals 5 minus 5 equals 0. So in the system, it should say 0 for the amount of drugs that are left. Okay, this particular nurse was supposed to have gotten out 0.5 milligrams of clonazepam from the system. It doesn't show that she administered it to the patient, so they were able to see that in the records. The nurse then notated that she dropped the pill. Now that happens too. That happens. However, when you drop the pill, you're supposed to go back into the system and notate that you dropped the pill. And then what's the next thing that you would think would happen? The next logical thing that you would think would happen if you drop a pill?
Log it.
Yeah, that, but you got to get another one too, right? You got to get another 5.5 milligrams. You got to give it to the patient. Yeah. So they're saying that in the system, they didn't show where she actually got another 0.5 milligrams either. So she didn't log the fact that she dropped, quote unquote, the 0.5 mil. And she also didn't show where she pulled out another 0.5 mil to give to the patient. So you can kind of almost logically conclude that maybe she didn't give the drug to the patient.
Oh.
Crazy stuff. So, okay, I'm sorry. This is such a serious subject, but I'm laughing at Stephanie. Stephanie said, I definitely know when my mom is off her meds. Funny. Oh.
It is funny. It would be worse if her mom wasn't on medication.
Oh. Yeah, yeah. Now, I think this is Kay again saying, frightening reality, skilled nursing facilities will go to great lengths to have the elder sign DNR, do not resuscitate, and receive their and receive their medications because the elder is giving up or refusing care, especially when assets to afford care are running out. Meanwhile, the meds are still rolling into the med cabinet. Yeah, Kay has seen this firsthand because look, again, as a former chief audit executive in healthcare, this is exactly what I saw at one point. Nurses would come and say, hey, our fellow nurses are stealing. They even gave us the evidence at one point in time. Said, here it is, all the evidence. So now here's the thing too. Statistically speaking, they do say that people in the medical profession, specifically doctors and nurses, have a higher chance of being addicted to either alcohol, drugs, or sex.
Yeah. You said all three, right?
Oh, I said all three. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's so interesting. When I was a chief auditor in the healthcare setting, I literally made my staff watch Nurse Jackie because when I watched that series that was on Showtime, I was like, oh, this is art imitating life.
Yeah. It's a good show. It's a good
Very
show.
good show. Yeah.
You know what show that doctors and nurses have said is one of the most accurate medical shows that have been on TV?
ER.
Scrubs. Dead serious. As funny as it is, like, especially their first year where they're like crying in the was it the closet, some of that, or using the on-call rooms for things other than sleeping. And yep, they said all of that stuff is so common in the medical industry. They said that was actually one of the most honest, most clear shows is Scrubs, which is also like one of the best shows ever on TV. But yeah, that's not
right. Oh, and from working in that setting, I can confirm that, yeah, all the shenanigans in the room, yeah, that is absolutely. We used to get complaints because I was over the complaint hotline too. We would get complaints about doctors and nurses and nurses and nurses and doctors and man.
Which we have to have a sidebar if we're going to bring up Scrubs. I think we need to have a Scrubs and Psych crossover event between those two shows.
Ooh, that would be just the best. Yeah. Look, I was upset when Psych was taken off the air.
They're still they still put out movies from time to time. They put out 3 different movies.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know. Wait, Bonita must not have heard it. Drugs, alcohol, or what? Wait, what?
Sex.
Yeah, sex, Bonita, sex.
I was expecting you to have a sound for that one. Bound. Nope.
Did you say bow chicka bow wow?
Oh man, that really would have gone well too. Okay, so listen, if you're just joining us, we are talking about a healthcare facility in which a patient's mom suspected that the patient wasn't getting all of their medication. Patient ended up dying, and the facility started investigating the nurse and found some very interesting things. And that's where we stopped, because I hadn't even told you what the interesting things were, except for the fact that there's no record of her actually giving the drug that the patient needed to the patient.
Yeah.
You guys ready to talk about some of the other stuff?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, in 2022, the nurse admitted to license renewal fraud because she made false statements on her nursing license application or renewal. You have to have it renewed every so often, and there's a board that you have to go through. So that was one thing that she did. That's just minor. So listen, in 2019, here's what the fraud on her application. She failed to disclose a 2019 arrest for public intoxication. Now, that arrest was still pending at the time she submitted her license renewal application in 2020.
She knew what she was doing. I looked up the renewal application. It's clear as mud. There's like 7 questions. And so that, yeah. So that one is, since you last renewed, and except for minor violations of traffic laws resulting in fines and arrests or convictions that have been expunged, have you been arrested, entered into a diversion agreement, been convicted of? She was arrested. There. Yes. You have to answer yes.
Yep. Well, here's the other thing. She also failed to disclose that she was terminated from her job in 2019 for absenteeism and for not following policies.
How dare you?
So then she didn't answer possibly question number 5. Since your last renewed, have you ever been terminated, reprimanded, disciplined, or demoted in the scope of your practice as a nurse or as another healthcare professional?
Nope.
Yeah.
And I understand they were sitting there talking. People are going to make mistakes on their renewal applications and everything else. But at some point, how do you tell the people that it actually made a mistake and somebody who's intentionally lying?
Yep. So now the local news channel, they reached out to her and they interviewed her and they asked her, did you give this woman her medication? And she said, yes.
Of course I did.
Absolutely, I gave her medication. Now, we all know that the evidence, well, it probably shows something different.
Just had a thought cross my mind. So she was supposed to administer that medication and then the mom passed away, right? Is that 0.5% enough that if they would have done a toxicology, that it should have been in her system if she received it within a certain amount of time from her last dosage?
Ooh, that's a good question. That I don't know.
Stephanie might know.
That I don't know.
Well,
I'm
I
That's
am-
a very good question.
Stephanie knows because her mom's a nurse. Big jump, but Stephanie, I know you got me on this. Come on.
But let me
You
say
know-
this, though.
Go ahead.
It is not unusual for nurses to be brought before the nursing board. It is a regular occurrence in many states. Let me just give you an example of Indiana. In 2024, they had 155 total complaints, 27 of which included a charge of engaging in fraud or material deception in order to obtain a license. In 2025, they had 45 total complaints, 24% of which included a charge of engaging in fraud or material deception in order to obtain a license.
I would assume, going back to the question of would that medication have prevented the death is basically where it seems like where Christine is going with. I would assume that's one of the first things they would have done is investigate to see the cause of death, right? And to see if that would have impacted, because then you're going after someone for, see, it wouldn't be murder. What would it be?
Manslaughter.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, manslaughter. Yeah. So I mean, I assume that would have been the first thing. I would hope, that's the first thing they do, right? Is do some type of investigation that way.
You would hope. Now, what ended up happening to her, though, is a nursing director at the facility turned her in to the state nursing board. And while I will say that is common practice, I probably would have gone a step further and turned them over to law enforcement. But hey, that's just me. So here's what the nursing board did. So the local news station interviewed the CEO of the State Nurses Association, and they ended up fining her for $1,000. And the CEO actually said that a $1,000 fine is common for renewal fraud. Now, I don't know about you all, but the fact that she said that that amount was common for renewal fraud leads me to believe that fraud within the renewal process happens fairly often, because she didn't say, well, we don't really have renewal fraud that often, but she said a $1,000 fine is common for renewal fraud. And she also said that some mistakes were made on the licensure application and that it was unintentional. She also said that nurses are high risk because they have access to medications. And she said also that drug diversion, meaning the taking of drugs, is high in the healthcare industry.
No, I mean, I could see it, right? I mean, if you've ever had any type of, whether it's a surgery or major pain where you had a prescription, drug, how it makes you feel. Some people are impacted, differently than others, but how that makes you feel. Now you're working, 14, 15-hour days, you're stressed, whatever. You've got all these, like you said, there's 3 different very common addictions that go on. I mean, it's right there that temptation is extremely, we talk about fraud, triangles and all of that. And I mean, it's right there for the taking. The temptation would be very, very strong.
Okay, let me just say this, because y'all know how I am. I hate PR stunts and PR campaigns. Let me just read you what else the CEO said. And she said, it's truly a liability issue for the hospital or long-term care facility if the patient does not receive the intended medications. I do believe through the safety measures and detection process, we do have a good handle on when individuals are diverting. And we do have a good system in place to get them the help they need and to help them retain their licenses and keep them in practice. If they are stealing drugs, why the hell do you still want them in practice and retaining their licenses?
I think it's because she sits there and talks about that shortage.
Yeah.
Ah, there we go. Christine brought up the other. Yeah.
It's simply as far as that. Their jobs become harder when they set standards and accountability. So they're okay with overlooking things if it means it makes everybody's life easier. They think it does, but it festers a very bad environment. Like, why would you want to work for an organization like that?
Well, and why do organizations not fire bad employees? How often in any industry, right? How often is someone promoted because they're a terrible employee, but they don't want to fire them, so they just promote them to get them out of the department? It's very similar.
Yeah. So can you imagine? Because we have a nurse shortage, we are going to allow for some discrepancies in the administration of drugs. Now, Stephanie says she has no idea about the question that you asked earlier.
I found it. It's got a very long half-life, which means they can't really tell how, like, your last dose and it can stay into your system anywhere for 7 days up to a month.
Yeah. Now, Kay said, when in doubt, asking the question in multiple different ways is helpful to get consistent answers that lead to the truth. Maybe asking in a different language might help too. Totally agreed.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephanie, I'm not surprised. Stephanie says you would be amazed at how many healthcare professionals are allowed to keep practicing and are just put on professional probation. I'm not surprised because I worked in the industry and it is insane. And so I think this might be Kay again, either Kay or Carol. I'm sure on the question of the application. I am sure on. Oh, one of the questions on the application still remains: have you ever been accused, arrested, or convicted of stealing medications? Yeah.
It does not. All of the questions are initially phrased since you last renewed.
Okay. Now, Muhammad says, I once heard about a guy who had a hair transplant done by someone he thought was a real doctor. Turns out the guy was
I
just a
just saw a
barber.
video of this woman who ended up getting Botox, and it literally looked like somebody sat and punched her face every single area that she got the injections.
Ooh.
And people were like, you need to call and find out that batch number. Like, there's something wrong with that injectable. And I'm going, yeah, never doing Botox. I don't want to look like that.
Now, I've got to apologize because I actually thought Muhammad was making a joke until I saw the second half. After the surgery, the patient kept having headaches and pain in his head, and a few weeks later, he died.
Yeah.
That escalated quickly. Wow.
Yeah. My bad. I apologize on that. Wow. Yeah. Now, I think this is Kay says, comes to keeping warm bodies on payroll to keep the business running profits. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So, okay, here's the thing too. What's very interesting is I think I said the nursing director turned her in to the state board. Typically, that's the way that it happens or should happen. The hospital should meet internally and look at the evidence that they have, and they, as a hospital, should decide if they want to turn it over to the board. Here's the thing. If something happened that was serious enough for a hospital, your own employer, to turn you over to your licensure board, why in the hell would your licensure board let you keep your license if it was that egregious? The other thing, too, is I noticed with the licensure board, they only talked about the fraud in the application. They didn't talk about the incident that happened with this young woman and the potential alleged drug diversion.
Well, and did you see what that director of nursing specifically said that caused her to go? Like how she was acting?
No, I missed that. What did she say?
Oh, yeah.
Well, records show staff found her standing at the medication cart asleep, possibly under the influence, and licking her lips and picking at the skin on her face and arms a lot. Those nurses know what certain medications, what you act like when you're on them.
Yep. So imagine as a healthcare facility, you turn someone into a state licensing board and you tell them one of my fellow nurses is licking their lips and acting like they're inebriated. And you still get to keep your license after only paying $1,000 fine. Again, I told you I worked in that healthcare setting. I had nurses come to me and say people were stealing. They gave us the data to actually look at. We looked at the data and let me just say it did not look good. And when I turned the data over first to the management team, I received pushback in a healthcare setting. Now, I'm not going to go too far into that. I'm just going to leave it at that. Let your imagination run wild.
That's just crazy to me. Your whole entire platform, your organization, your business is built on protecting, saving, and curing human beings. And you're contradicting yourself by allowing this kind of stuff to continue happening and turning. Not saying all hospitals, doctors' offices, and stuff like that. But at what point, we know this is, would you consider it an epidemic? Rob? That it's just
Yeah.
known
Yeah.
and that these places are okay with it. So why isn't anybody looking at like advocating somehow and getting that mindset changed?
I think some groups do try. But let's just be honest. The big bad healthcare machine is so big, it doesn't matter. Think about Purdue Pharma with the opioid crisis.
Mhm.
First, they did clinical trials on was it fentanyl? First, they did clinical trials. They showed that it could be addictive, and because of a loophole, they weren't necessarily allowed to disclose it. And then we had this opioid crisis that just broke out in the US. We had the data showing that these things were happening. Remember, there was a small town in West Virginia that was filling enough prescription orders to basically dispense drugs to the entire town 4 times over within a month. So the data was there. But they didn't bust them until later on, because when you order drugs, you have to order through an authorized dealer business, so to speak, and that business has to order from DEA. Everybody is licensed, so you have the data to show how much and how many of a drug is being ordered.
Yeah.
But in an industry that is severely understaffed at every level, then the kind of crackdown that would be needed would cripple our medical industry.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, like I'm not saying that that's an excuse. Like I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I mean that's the reality, right? So that's what I assume is that's what they're balancing. Is it worth? I mean, almost destroying our medical industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So before we talk about her charges, let's talk about some of the red flags, right? She already had a criminal history. She had public intoxication problems. So, the nurse director gave a formal report that indicated that she may be using some substances. We had a case where there was a lack of documentation in the medical system, in the drug dispensing cabinet, where some drugs may have been missing. So you have medical discrepancies. Well, and then on camera, because I actually watched the video footage of her when she denied taking the medication, which is fine, right? You have your right to deny it. But you all see how I kind of read deeper in this stuff, whether it's the written language that we see here or even body language. You should watch it. There was no remorse, no accountability, nothing. She said, no, I didn't take her medicine. Yes, I gave her medicine. No acknowledgement of, hey, I'm sad that she passed, but I didn't have anything to do with it. It was just, nope.
Yeah.
So before we get to the charges too, let's talk about what could have been done to prevent this nonsense. In my mind, one, licensing and vetting, right? We could do better about that. We know she lied on her application, but we also know that there was a specific incident in a specific facility where they think that she may have taken some drugs, and an observation from a supervisor that she may have allegedly taken some drugs. So the actual licensing process and then the board of nursing oversight, because the things that she's charged with have nothing to do with this incident of the death of this woman, and everything to do with paperwork for the most part. Now the facility, why didn't they suspend her upon investigation?
I mean, there's a part of me I'm wondering, as soon as you get a complaint of you potentially being under the influence, why do they not require you to take a drug test? Do you know I have to do that at my job? If somebody feels I'm under the influence, it's part of our policy. And I'm all for it. Why not?
Here's the thing. They can. Most nurses have to sign a form saying that they are susceptible to random drug tests at any point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
my job I don't hold anybody's life in their balance in my position. But I mean, I don't know.
okay.
I mean,
And
that's okay.
I did misspeak previously. Let me just say this. I did misspeak. One of her charges is somewhat related to drug diversion. But before we go there, I think this is Kay again. Every industry you find has bad actors. Every industry you find bad actors and other bad actors that are great at looking the other way to keep their job rather than taking a stance. They just keep the money rolling in. Things would be very different if those in charge were personally impacted. Heads would roll. Totally agree. Because even in my situation, when I said, hey, here's what we're seeing, they looked at me as if I were the enemy. They didn't even know at first that I'd gotten the information directly from the nurses. I didn't go on any kind of witch hunt. People came to me and said, here's what is happening. And they did it under the guise of an anonymity. And so I was asked to actually give up the names, and I said no.
Mm-mm.
So we have people who talk about what they would do when push comes to shove, that they would be honest and they would speak up and do the right thing. But let's be honest, to Kay's point, most people are cowards. Most people will not say anything. Most people will. Anyway, I'll just leave that at that. So the charges. She was charged with interference with medical services. That's a level 5 felony. Obtaining a controlled substance by fraud or deceit. That's a level 6 felony. So those are the two charges that relate directly to this incident. Failure to make, keep, or furnish records. That's a level 6 felony. And then furnishing false or fraudulent information. That is a level 6 felony as well.
I'm gonna look that up. Levels of felony. Did you know I looked it up? She's still active.
Yeah. And I mean, to a certain extent, we live in the US, right? Where people are innocent until proven guilty.
Correct.
So to that extent, it's hard to really make people inactive if they're still innocent. Unless, and this is the part where it gets tricky, you put them on paid administrative leave because you shouldn't want to take on that risk. You put them on paid leave until the investigation is done.
Because even right now, isn't like malpractice insurance like outrageous? So now that pushes good doctors and medical professionals out because they can't pay for all the bad people out there. Because I do think you need to have that. There's going to be mistakes. I understand that. Mistakes are going to be made. But not when it's because of your own doing.
Yeah.
Because wouldn't the hospital have to pay for that, or the nursing home? Wouldn't they be able to sue for malpractice if they found out like that was the cause of death?
I don't know if it would be malpractice, but it would be something though, right? Negligence or something like that.
Negligence.
But yeah, it's sad because we know that there are more good nurses out there than bad, right? But when we live in a social media world and you can pull up a story about a nurse doing something bad, you can start to believe that that's the majority of them. But also, if there are no consequences for those who are doing wrong, or light consequences, it makes you think that it is the majority of them.
So in the state of Indiana, I think with all of those charges, she could be facing a maximum of 13.5 years.
Oh, wow.
With as little as 6 months. depending on how they stack those charges.
Very
That's a-
interesting.
That's a big 6 months to 13 and a half years is big.
Yeah, that is a big difference.
It is. No, I mean, I'm thankful in a weird way that this woman is stepping up and like talking to the news crews and everything else about what happened with her mom. I feel sad, come to find out, she didn't even realize this until the news station contacted her.
Yep.
Like, what a way to find out.
She had her suspicion the entire time, and the hospital didn't inform her that this nurse was having problems. As Christine just said, she found out because the news station contacted her about this nurse. Isn't that crazy?
That is.
And so now she's probably kicking herself because she's thinking that she could have stopped it because she was onto something. The red flags were waving and she saw them and she just didn't speak up enough. So now she's going to need some sort of therapy because she's going through some sort of trauma now.
Yeah. How are you ever going to trust a nurse again? Or you're going to question everything.
Yeah. Well, I'll take it a step further. How is she ever going to trust herself? Because she's probably beating herself up first and then thinking about the nurses. You know, I can only imagine what's going through her head and the amount of just trauma she's facing because of this nonsense. And Kay said we have a huge growing problem with the lack of accountability in our country. Yeah, we do. We really do. And it's insane.
Is it just me or do I feel like it's gotten worse since COVID?
Yeah, it has.
And I'm not talking just I'm even talking about self accountability, like adults holding themselves accountable and that sort of stuff.
Well, okay. So I'm going to say this as a side note real quick, and then I'm going to bounce off of it because there's going to be one person that's going to send me a Nastagram and I'm going to quickly delete it. But if you look at it, it kind of is our fault because of the way we raise children. When you move from, accountability to the participation trophy generation, we taught them that no matter what they do, it's good. And so now these children are now adults. And so the adults lack the accountability. And so the kids lack the accountability. And then when COVID hit, let's think about a few things that we did. We did several things real well to try and help the nation. We all came together. Like when you saw those truck drivers who were just against all odds delivering stuff, that gave you hope for humanity. But then when you saw our government do things like rent moratoriums and then pausing student loans. So look at what the rent moratorium did. It told people that you didn't have to pay rent and you could stay in your home. However, the people that actually own those homes, many of them ended up being foreclosed on because they couldn't pay their mortgages. But you created this entitlement mentality. If you go to TikTok right now and you type in the search term, "I'm not paying my student loans back," you'll see tons of videos of people saying that they're not paying them back. They got grace during a time when they needed it. And instead of being grateful for that grace, it became an entitlement. So we took the participation trophy, turned that into entitlement during COVID, and here we are stuck in this nonsense. There's several other examples I could give, but I'm just going to stop right there.
You were hopping off that soapbox real fast.
Yeah, because it's stupid. It's very obvious in hindsight, right? It's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, but it's very obvious.
Yeah.
So
all we can do is try learning from the mistakes. But yeah, no, I think you were right. Once some of this stuff came down, they should have, like I said, I understand getting the intoxication, those kind of stuff really aren't directly related to her job. So is it that they just put a little bit more scrutiny on her? But then should there have been something more than just that $1,000 fine? But I don't think that would have stopped her. But I think it would have put her under a microscope a little bit more. Like, it's okay to be critical when people make mistakes. and to be able to give them room to correct their actions and grow. But you can forgive, but we shouldn't forget.
Yeah,
We
but
should
here's the
never
thing with
forget.
this one. This is why I'm mad at this one. This was a classic baseball game. She had 3 strikes, so she should have been out. And what I mean by that is, in 2019, she was fired from the job for not following instructions as a nurse. Okay. Then there was another then in 2022, she lied on her application to renew her nursing license. That's another infraction. And then with this incident that we're actually talking about, allegedly she failed to give medication to a patient. That patient later died. Now, that correlation may not lead to causation. That may be true, but you've got 3 serious infractions for a medical professional and they still have their license. Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
This is just some stupid.
I'm so happy your noise machine is working.
Nah, so anyway, okay, so look, okay, before we go, if there's one tip that I would give somebody, just one tip, you can ask the hospital or the nursing facility to see your loved one's records. And I don't mean the flowery doctor's notes. You can ask to see the detailed records. And let me tell you, every time they were dispensed medication will be in their file. If you see a time missing, if you know that your loved one is supposed to get pain meds every 6 hours and you see that they haven't been getting it every 6 hours, you can say something. You can request, as long as you have power of attorney or you're the next of kin and you legally have the right to do so, you can request their records and you can see everything that's being done. Now, if they don't have clear and accurate records, that's another problem too, because medical facilities were required to have electronic medical records by, I forgot what year now. I think it was like 2021. Heck, I don't remember. No, 2018, 17, something like that. So yeah, you can request those records and you should.
Yeah, and I look at, so let's see rural areas with some of these nursing homes and stuff. Do they even have the capabilities of integrating that technology to help reduce those controls? Like, or help, or I should say not reduce the controls, but increase their controls to avoid that.
In rural areas, if they receive Medicare or Medicaid funding, they were required to have electronic medical record systems. So it was tied to the government. The government actually gave funds. They gave stimulus money for organizations to be able to purchase tools. Now, Benita's saying, I need that noise machine. So if you guys haven't been to Benita's book club, wait, book club changed days now. It's on Wednesday now, right, B? You need to go to the book club. I haven't been in a while, even though I have been still reading and or listening to the books. I've just been so swamped. But could you imagine a book club with a sound machine?
Nope.
I don't know if I could really imagine that. That would be real funny. Although I would be glad to watch Benita try and do that, because that could bring some fun to it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wait, is this K again? I'm hearing students in nursing school got exempt from many clinicals and book work, then got licensed because of shortages during COVID. Oh, yeah, I do remember reading that. Yeah. Yeah, that I think that did happen, K. Yeah, and that's just sad.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's all about that money. So you got to kind of have to, I don't know, be vigilant. I can't even talk at the end of today. You have to be vigilant because this stuff is crazy. All right. Did we miss anything, Christine?
No, I don't think so.
All
It was
right.
a good story. Frustrating.
Yeah, I'll say. So if you have a loved one that's in a long-term care facility or in the hospital, just ask to see the records, talk to the nurses, and do remember though, like I said earlier, most nurses are good. Don't be tainted by a few bad stories, or even by this show, because at one point we had so many medical stories, I was starting to get a little upset at the medical profession, and then I had to think to myself, wait a minute, this doesn't represent a majority of them. Some things do happen regularly, but this does not this does not account for majority of the professionals who are out there saving lives. And in case said, then they assist in surgeries when they've been fast tracked to get their nursing licenses. Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
So that's all we've got for this week, you guys. If you like this podcast, tell your friends. They can watch it on LinkedIn and YouTube. Tell them to follow me on LinkedIn. They'll see every time I go live. We'll be doing Audit Bites again soon. I just took a long break. I needed a break. I've been real busy developing the best AI platform for internal auditors, Audit Leverage. If you will be at the International Conference in Toronto, Thomas and I will be there. We will have a booth. You can get a demo of IA Stream and Audit Leverage. And for those of you going to the RMAC conference in Denver, I will be there with Audit Leverage. I'm presenting, and we'll have a booth for Audit Leverage. So we're moving right along there, Christine.
I won't be there. But I'm sure you guys will have fun. I hope you guys have a great crowd turnout, and yeah, you guys will have fun.
Yeah, we will. So, all right. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you next week.
See ya.